Today on Locked On Rockies, avoid the rocks in your fantasy baseball draft. Let's look at it.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can find all of the video podcasts and the best place to be part of the show. If you head on over to Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, you can leave your comments, you can fire off your Rockies hot takes and be part of the show, just like so many of you do. We got so many folks chiming in on each and every episode because the Locked On Rockies community is buzzing about the Rocks. Yeah, we're building a little hype over here. Not something that's going to, we're not over here thinking we're the latest and greatest. We don't think we're going to change the landscape of baseball this year, but baseball is in the air. Spring training right around the corner. Pitchers and catchers reporting real soon. Baseball is on the way back. And for us Rockies fans, of course, this is the time we have to be excited, because this is the time where the season's still going the best for us when it hasn't even started yet, and through spring training. Spring training storyline we're going to talk about a little bit today, of course, is Kris Bryant. And there's another little note from Thomas Harding when he adds there. And we also got a top 100 fantasy baseball player rankings from MLB.com. And I'm actually going to ask you all for help, because I'm not a big fantasy baseball guy. The only fantasy sport I'm really into is football. So I want to talk to you folks. I want to hear from you out there who play fantasy baseball, who got their fantasy baseball drafts coming up, who they're thinking, what are they thinking here this year in terms of the Rockies. Of course, Locked On Fantasy Baseball plays great place to go as well for that. Unfortunately, my normal schedule hasn't allowed for me to set up a lot of crossovers with folks lately. So hopefully we can get some stuff going where I can talk to those guys too and help get you some more advice about your Rockies players and some other fantasy baseball stuff here ahead of the season. But I saw this headline and I was just curious, and I wanted to I was wondering how many Rockies, if any Rockies, would even top or crack into the top 100 fantasy baseball players. And it's again, I think when we're talking fantasy baseball, there's a little bit of elements in there that we have to discuss that makes it so it's like, just because they're not on the list, and just because maybe the Rockies aren't valued as much, like in this top 100, doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad spot for where these players are at. And I'll explain more on that coming up here in just a moment. Before we go any further, got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So I was getting ready this morning, and I looked up here, and I got an email from MLB.com. The top 100 fantasy players for 2025. Prepare for your draft with insight and analysis from Yahoo Sports experts. That's Andy Burns, Dalton Del Don, and Scott Panowski. They got their rankings here, and so you're looking at the top here: Shohei Ohtani, number 1, Bobby Witt Jr., Aaron Judge, Ellie De La Cruz, Jose Ramirez, Gunnar Henderson, Mookie Betts, Kyle Tucker, Corbin Carroll, Juan Soto. Top 10 right there. And you're like, okay, great. None of that surprise. And then if you keep going down and down and down, you're kind of understanding. And then you're like, are any Rockies on this list? And yes, in fact, one Rockies player is on this list, and it's Brenton Doyle. And it's interesting that it's Brenton Doyle, and it's only just Brenton Doyle. I figured that fantasy-wise, if you were thinking about drafting your fantasy team, and really if you're in these early rounds or these rounds where you're thinking like everyday type of guys, Brenton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar are probably the only two surefire things that you want to use a higher draft pick on in your fantasy draft, because of just what those guys can do, what the overall impact on multiple areas of the game and multiple point scoring opportunities for you in fantasy. Brenton Doyle is your base stealer. Brenton Doyle is, a guy that will hit home runs or has hit home runs that can drive in runs. I'm curious if his fantasy stock has been impacted maybe better or worse with the news and with the discussions of him being the leadoff hitter for the Rockies, with the struggles that he's had with the leadoff spot. I wonder if that's going to be, I wonder if that might impact his RBI. And if maybe you're looking for that, if at the point in the draft, where you're getting to drafting a Brenton Doyle, you're sitting there saying, all right, I'm looking for someone that's going to drive, runs. Runs are my big focus right here. I need to add somebody that runs and RBI are a big deal. Is Brenton Doyle going to be the way you lean? And are you going to maybe hesitate a little bit more because of that, because of the fact that he's in the leadoff spot? Now, granted, that gives you more at bats, gets you the most amount of at bats, the most amount of possibilities to get on base. But again, this is where I ask you, the fans, what would be a bigger mindset for you? Would it be, just base hits and home runs and possibilities with what Brenton Doyle can do, or is RBI the bigger deal? It probably depends on how your team's looking at that point, right? But I would say, I think for people, I got some people that when they play fantasy baseball and they reach out to me and they're like, who am I drafting from the Rockies if I'm taking people? And it's Brenton Doyle, Ezekiel Tovar off the rip every time. And that brings me to my other point. I'm just curious here why, what would mean, what left Ezekiel Tovar off of this list, especially when you're and I'm talking at the bottom, because the thing with Ezekiel Tovar that was so impressive, and I would imagine is a big deal for fantasy baseball teams. Extra base hits, 26 home run, let me get the doubles from last year. 45 doubles in that time, and the 78 RBI. Let's see how many runs. 83 runs scored himself. I forgot that someone gave him an MVP award vote last year. That's so tight. Anyway, I'm just curious if where is that not like just as valuable, and mixed with the fact that I think the big difference maker, of course, for these two guys in fantasy baseball terms, it's got to be stolen bases. It's got to be because Brenton Doyle is going to be much more of a threat for you to for a base stealing threat, and maybe that when you're looking at analyzing all these players, when you're looking at analyzing what the rest of baseball can bring to you as a fantasy baseball team. The lack of stolen bases is probably what would make you say, all right, we're going to put Ezekiel Tovar on the outside looking in, and we're going to go with Brenton Doyle. 6 stolen bases for Ezekiel Tovar last year compared to Brenton Doyle's 30. The line overall, I think when you're looking at Brenton Doyle's just offensive line, and I don't know how much of an impact defense has on fantasy baseball, but when you're just looking at kind of those buzzworthy little stats, 23 home run, 82 runs scored, 72 RBI, 30 stolen bases. There's lots of kind of nice juicy things there, and I think people probably when we're talking about that switch to leadoff, I think a lot of people will be watching that, but it's going to be, a lot of people are going to have to take that risk and take that jump before the season gets started. And they might not know about those, the slight struggles at the leadoff spot. Granted, didn't lead off a ton. Let's see if I can get the stats real quick. Leadoff stats 2024. I believe, let's see. Oh, here you go. I just found fantasydata.com, and he scored last year 1,208 fantasy points. Brenton Doyle did. I'm curious. I want to. Here, let's go to Yahoo. Let's use their metrics there. So if you're using Yahoo's metrics, the people that compiled this list, Brenton Doyle scored 1,175 fantasy points there for the Rockies. And let's take a look here real quick since we found this website. Basically, what I was looking for was Doyle batted like under 200 when he led off, like really struggled at the leadoff position last year, and the times that he did do it. I kind of got lost in the sauce and I got on this website. But let's see here. 1,199.5. So not as far off as I thought between the two guys. And certainly, I wonder what the projections show there for both of those guys next year, and what that's going to look like for them, and what it means. Because I'm just looking at fantasy points here, and looks like it's mostly just offense stuff here. So like I said, I'm not a big fantasy baseball head, but interesting to see. And because I think, again, these are the top 100 fantasy baseball players that are going through there. I'm not super shocked that it's just Brenton Doyle on this list. I think a lot of people, I think Ezekiel Tovar could probably be exchanged with people at that part of the list as well. But I think, just about every team's probably got an argument for that same exact guy, like someone that can swap in at the bottom of that list. But it does make me wonder, or think though, hey, I still don't tell people to avoid the Rockies in fantasy drafts. There's very specific ones that you go for. And me this year, I think if you're going to draft and you want to be the two surefire bets are Tovar and Doyle. If you want to take the risk, and I don't think it's that crazy of one, I mean, especially if you can get him later in the, while you're building out your bench and taking flyers on people, Nolan Jones could be the steal of the fantasy draft. If Nolan Jones, drops all the way in fantasy drafts and then he plays the way he's capable of playing, like he did, that first year, that's going to be a steal in terms of fantasy baseball value. I do like taking a fly. You maybe don't need to draft him, but keeping an eye on him on the wires is Michael Toglia. I think becoming that. I think that the knowledge going into the season and the comfortable, getting more comfortable being that major league player, getting more in a groove, and once he gets into that season groove, he's going to hit the ball. He's going to hit the ball over the wall. Yeah, I think that, the average and whatnot still might be something to be desired, but he's going to hit the ball over the wall. And that, fantasy-wise, is always good news. Always good news. And then, of course, I think, your main guys. I think your interesting veterans for the Rockies this year will be your McMahon and Estrada. I mean, that with the addition there, he's going to be an interesting one. Certainly not someone you're probably going to be looking to draft, especially new team and injury concerns there. But if he does flourish, if he kind of does have that, I came to the Rockies, needed a bounce back type of season that we've seen from people before, fantasy wise, that's going to be great for you. Big picture, we'll see what it does and how it impacts the Rockies overall as win-loss records. But he could be interesting. I think Ryan McMahon probably is going to be a guy that you could add, drop, throughout the season, and you need a bat, bring him in there, especially in certain series. If you can have Ryan McMahon filling out your team, filling out your roster when he's going on one of his heaters, then you're going to be in a good spot. But you also got to go with the hot and cold stuff. I mean, he is really a fascinating story to look here this year, just as what does this season look for him, as he is one of the people taking over for Charlie Blackmon in that leadership role, but he's still navigating the fact that his seasons continue to be up and down, looking for that consistency there. He will be really fascinating to see, and I'm hoping for his sake the rest of the lineup can take some pressure off of him offensively, so he can relax a little bit more and be someone that is going to be a solid contributor, not just for fantasy, but I probably won't be doing fantasy. Hosting a daily podcast and following that is it's kind of enough for me. But anyway, so again, just some basic, just kind of reacting to where how the Rockies are viewed in the world of fantasy baseball. It's not necessarily the most important thing to focus on, certainly, but it's just more data. It's just more things to look at and kind of see, how do the Rockies fare against some of these other players? How do the Rockies stack up? When you're, take the teams out of it, just strip the teams away from the equation and just focusing on the players themselves specifically. How do the Rockies rank up? Where do they look? And especially as people are looking ahead for next year. And, again, it's another situation in which the Rockies can't be shocked that there's not a lot. We can't be shocked as Rockies fans that there's not a lot of Rockies on this list, that there's only one Rocky in the top 100 fantasy baseball players. Well, it's because the Rockies have not been good, so there needs to be more than just some, hey, the Rockies were bad, but Ezekiel Tovar hit a lot of doubles. It needs to be more than that to get the recognition that the Rockies want. But to get recognized, you got to win. And if you win, you're successful. And that's just not where the Rockies have been at lately. All right. Storyline to watch for Chris Bryant coming up next here. And then we will finish off with your YouTube comments. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. So you never know. Maybe you're feeling like, hey, that Jokic fella, he's pretty good. I'm going to go see what he's doing. What's up in the middle of the game? Is he going to get another triple double? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do, another crazy mind blowing thing like he always does? Well, if you got a hunch, and if you think that hunch is going to come true, the FanDuel app is going to help you turn that into a win. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you found it. You found the right spot. You know where to be, because that is right here for us. Talk a little fantasy baseball there. And again, I want to hear from the fantasy baseball players in the audience here. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what we like on the, tell me what Rockies stat lines and things we should be looking for the fantasy baseball heads out there. What should people look for in Rockies players if they're going to be drafting them on their fantasy baseball teams? I want to hear from, I know we got fantasy baseball players out there, so I want to hear about it in the comments below. Let me know where I missed, and not Rockies related. Who you draft, don't give away your sleepers, your sneak peeks, but who's your guy this year? The one of the big names that you want to get and make sure they are on your team. Let me know in the comments below. A little interesting nugget from Thomas Harding, and there was a Patrick Saunders Q&A that we'll talk about probably this week that I haven't gotten to go through yet. So in case you were curious about any of that, I'm going to look into that hopefully this week, and then look into some of it, because those Patrick Saunders mailbags always have some real interesting information to come out of them. There's always little nuggets there, especially we were talking a lot about Brenton Doyle in that first segment. One of the things is saying that there are considerations for extending Brenton Doyle, which would be an interesting one. Nothing actually happening, but it is it would be, apparently it's being discussed. So there we go, and we'll dive more into that here as well once we get through that piece. I just know that might have been some news that some people were hearing over the weekend or seeing right before the weekend, and we're wondering what I was going to talk about. So haven't gotten to go through all of that yet, but short reaction to that. I think a Brenton Doyle extension is a good thing. I don't think that you can. I think if you keeping the pair of Tovar and Doyle together, it will be the right move for the Rockies as they build. It will be, how long you want to commit, and the years might look different than Ezekiel Tovar, considering the age differences between the two. But we've seen now 2 seasons of very strong defense from Brenton Doyle, Gold Glove caliber defense. We've seen the improvements on offense. Maybe they need to see maybe they're looking for one more or half a season of okay, this is Brenton Doyle. Like this is the expectation is what we saw last year, or for example, if that's the Brenton Doyle we know, that's the Brenton Doyle we want to, we'll sign to an extension. Maybe they're waiting to see how the season starts. I don't know, but I think that would be a move that shows you that you really believe in the core that's forming for this team. Really buying into it. If you do a Doyle extension, it's a full buy-in, at least with those two guys. So I guess I dove more into that anyway, but there's probably more in that piece that I need to get to. We head back over to MLB.com, the number one spring training storyline for each team and the Rockies. And, well, Thomas Harding says, how healthy will Kris Bryant be in 2025? Here's what the blurb says. By all reports, Bryant is adhered to a program designed to help him avoid the injuries, primarily to his back, that have marred his first 3 seasons under a 7-year, $182 million contract. Flexibility and core strength are in. Any kind of bulky lifting is out. The Rockies figure to keep his early participation in Cactus League games light, but when the season arrives, he will have to be healthy enough to play the outfield on the road and designated hitter at home. The impetus for signing Bryant was he would deliver batting average, on-base performance, and power while the team grew around him, but for too much of his tenure, the Rockies have had to find their way without him in the lineup. There we go. It's the doubling down. It's the tripling down. Kris Bryant is your starting right fielder. And maybe on the road, I guess, just on the road. But this is a swing and a miss, man. Total miss right here. It should be, if you're already taking the bulk out, if the focus is the offense, then let him prioritize and focus on the offense. It hasn't worked. It's not that the Rockies haven't tried. I don't understand when if the main focus is the health, is the goal, mixed with they brought him in to be the offensive guy. Why are they even risking him playing in the outfield? I do not understand this. I don't understand this plan at all. This is something where I just feel like the Rockies are he has to be on the field, right? Kris Bryant, the namesake, the guy, he needs to be on the field in a way that isn't just batting, because we need to have him out there. We need to show him. We need fans to see him more, because again, I don't like being a negative I don't like being someone that thinks that or says like these type of bad things are going to happen. It's just he has had health issues while trying to play the outfield his entire time here. So if the goal is to put him in the position to be the healthiest and most successful, the outfield is not it. But, I here's the deal. Maybe the program's going to work this time. And maybe maybe having Kris Bryant in the outfield is going to pan out. I just don't understand why there's probably better defenders. While they might be young guys and, the offense might not be there and, there's strikeout issues or whatever, but all the other options you have defensively to play right field, why are we not using them? Because then who's going to is it Hunter Goodman's DHing on the road? Is it Bouchard? Is the young guy just getting at bats in the DH position on the road here? What does that look like? Is it going to be Sam Hilliard that's going to end up being the DH and taking away spots? Is it going to be some of those, veteran guys that they signed to minor league deals that break camp with the team? What does that look like? I just don't understand this piece of the puzzle will not make any sense to me. You have the perfect opportunity. You have the perfect spot for Kris Bryant to just enter into the Kyle Schwarber era of his life. Your job is to contribute to the offense. That is your job, and will get you some defense from time to time. Because Schwarber is basically primary DH, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. At least I feel like. Let's see. Kyle Schwarber. Did he play on defense? Batting, fielding. Let's see. 2024. He played 10 games in the outfield, I think. Yes. He played 41 innings in the outfield last year. Why would we not do the same exact thing for Kris Bryant? Sure, let him play a little outfield from time to time or something, or just have him play first base on days off for Tolia, like you said you were going to do at one point. I don't know. Put the warning flags up. Put the warning flags up there still. It's, and again, this isn't anything new. This is not a new development. We're just following the storyline as it continues to be doubled down on. And this just seems like a total oversight for the Rockies. Total oversight for them. We'll see how it goes. And I hope, and I am rooting for Chris. Let me make it abundantly clear. I am rooting for healthy Chris Bryant because I do think that, there's talent there. I just am not rooting for putting Chris Bryant in a situation that's going to make it more likely for him to get injured. I want Chris Bryant on the field is kind of a funny way to say it in this example. I want Chris Bryant in the lineup. I do. But we're not missing a Gold Glover out there when he's out. We're not missing the best right fielder defensively that the Rockies have when he's out. We're missing the bat. So why isn't that the focus? I'm just not going to get that. All right, quick break here, and then we're going to take some of your comments from the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section, so don't go anywhere. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Rockies podcast. I'm Paul Holden, your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where we pull our Locked On Rockies comments here. Let's go back. Last week, remember, we were talking about the Rockies being projected not only to be the worst team in baseball, but the worst team in franchise history. And TK says does not believe that 2025 is going to be the worst season in Colorado Rockies history. Absolutely not. If healthy, in particular the pitching staff, this team will win 70 to 75 games. Hopefully Buddy doesn't mismanage the bullpen, but these young arms will surprise a lot of people. 30-plus home runs for Tolia, Jones, and Goodman. Woo! Love that. FNL Aviator says, I'm definitely with you there. Their projected record isn't even the thing that shocked me. It's the White Sox improving that much. I hate being pessimistic, but I'd predict Rocks 62 and 100, but whether it's 55 or 65 wins, 107 or 97 losses, either way, it's not like we go the distance and get 70 wins. Maybe slight improvement. Second part, very true. The Rockies cannot accept a worse record than last year. If they do, they will not have any excuses of injuries, player retirement, media bias, playing at altitude, or the excuse of Dodgers payroll. Those shouldn't even be considered excuses if they're selling tickets and when we, the fan base, show up. A lot more there. It's got to show up. They got to do their part too. It's got to have a reason for showing up to the ballpark. Christopher here says, how are we not better than the A's? And they don't even spend money at all. This is their first off season where they spend some type of money. We need to get out of the Rockies' way and start rethinking baseball. Need to win more games. I would love some more creativity from the Rockies there, Christopher. I am with you. Jim says, Paul, you're like a baseball prophet. If only those who need to hear your message were listening. Tell it like it is. Hey, I talk a lot of Rockies baseball. And I don't know if I'd put myself as a prophet, but there's just some stuff that people that fly under the radar here. Drew says, I think they will win around 60 to 65. No way worse than the White Sox. Rockies will win 60 to 65. I think that's the safest range right there, right? I think if you want to set a reasonable expectation for yourself to not be overly disappointed, because losing 100 games or close to 100 games, 99 games, something like that, still sucks because it's a whole season of just watching losing. But I think you're not setting yourself up to be extra disappointed if you kind of put yourself into that 60 to 65 win total as the most reasonable one. Like I've said before, though, I do think the ceiling is 70. If they, if things go right, they handle business against bad teams, play well at home type of stuff, are a couple of things that could pop up to help them avoid 100 losses. Sam says, love the show, but I hate to say it, I might be watching the Padres. They make moves to keep the game exciting. Plus Connor Joe is back in the NL West. It was quite a quiet offseason up until late for the Padres, and they're kind of just making some more budget type moves, though. Not saying I don't like Connor Joe and the type of moves there. Didn't they just signed I think someone else too for another veteran player. Kind of been that way for a bit. I don't blame you if you want to watch the rest of the NL West, no matter what team you pick. Maybe the Giants are a little weird, but not the most exciting choice this year. But the NL West is a fascinating division with plenty of teams that are going to be interesting because the Padres still have a lot of good players and a lot of good talent on their team. they haven't added to it like that, but they've been successful more often than not playing the Dodgers. Yes, they fell short in the playoffs last year, but the Padres have been the team that has been a thorn in the Dodgers side for a good part of this, dominant Dodgers time. So I don't blame you if you want to watch more of the NL West. And again, it's been a boring offseason for the Rockies. There's no doubt about it. I can tell you from someone who's had to talk about it all offseason. So don't blame you there at all. All right, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode. As always, let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Rockies. Let me give me some fantasy baseball lessons in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section below. And folks, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB with our guy Sully. And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, check out Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.